when I wake up in the morning, God is at work, right? There's his great sovereign will being revealed in the world. And man, I just want to be in that flow. I want to get up and be in that flow and think about what is happening today in my orbit that God is a part of, and how do I participate in that? Scripturally, that is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 for me. That is trust in the Lord with all your heart, don't lean on your understanding, which is so hard, right? Because I got a lot of wisdom, bro. I've been at it a long time. I know, whatever. Literally, God's just saying, lay that down and trust me, and I'll take you where you need to go.
Welcome to the Age of Lions podcast, a platform and community dedicated to bringing purpose, strategy, and calling to kingdom-minded people who are 50 plus and excited about their next chapter. Here's your host, Mark Clement.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Age of Lions podcast. I'm so glad that you're here today. Today we have legendary CCM recording artist Geoff Moore talking about community, mentorship, and leaving it all on the field. Hey, before we get started, whatever platform you're enjoying this on, we want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and leave a comment to join the conversation. We are on this journey together, and we want to know what you think. If you were a part of the music scene, the Christian music scene in the late 80s or into the 90s or even early 2000s, you've probably heard of Geoff Moore or Geoff Moore in the Distance. He wrote some songs like Listen to Our Hearts and When All Is Said and Done. He's had over 20 number one songs that he has either done himself or written for other people, including some big hits for Steven Curtin Chapman like The Great Adventure and Speechless. He's a Dove Award winner and a Grammy nominee. But for me and my brothers and my family, he's a dear friend, and we've known him for a long time, and we just love him. He now has a ministry called Fellowship Adventures, which is a hunting ministry, an outdoor adventure ministry, really geared toward Christian leaders, pastors especially, church staff. They do pheasant hunting up in South Dakota, and they've got a ranch in Nebraska, and they do fishing in Canada. And I've had the privilege to be on many of these trips as a participant, and also Geoff and his company or his ministry are clients of mine, and we do a lot of production work for them. And my brother Michael John is his kind of number two guy, and really runs the organization with Geoff. And so we're about as tied together as you can get. And so I'm so excited that you guys are going to get to hear from him today. He's got incredible wisdom about aging, and also just an interesting look in this conversation into the inner workings of a Christian music artist, and just an incredible journey he's been on, and kind of what that life is like and how it affected him and his view on aging and what it means to age well and to make decisions about second and third and fourth stages of life and what to do in those things during those times. Just some incredible things. And this is a little bit longer episode than normal, maybe about 10 minutes longer than normal. We take a couple of little side trips down memory lane, if you'll indulge us a little bit. But I think you're going to enjoy what Geoff has to say and really hear some wisdom from him about the things he's learned about aging. So, hey, let's dive in. I know you're going to learn a lot from him and love him as much as we do. So let's go. Hey, Geoff Moore, what's up, my friend?
Hey, brother. So good to see you, man.
It's good to see you. I think it's been about a year since we were together in the same place. I was in your house for a little bit there in Franklin.
That's right, man. That's crazy to think.
I know, time is flying by.
At some point, but to think about where I'm sitting right now compared to what we were doing when we were having that conversation. It's pretty cool.
I know. So let's talk about that real quick. I was telling the audience a little bit about you and how we know each other. So I'd love for you just to kind of explain your ministry, or kind of how you went from artist to what you're doing now. And I know you still do some artist stuff too. And then talk about what you guys have going on. It's a really exciting time in your ministry.
Yeah, man. So, in my almost 30 years of full-time touring, I got pretty tired along the way, and I think I know we've talked about this privately, but I met a pastor a while back, and he described my condition at that time perfectly. He said, Geoff, I'm not burned out, but man, I am overheated. And I was like, that was the perfect phrase to describe me, because everything was going great. It just didn't, I knew in the back of my head it wasn't sustainable long term, and so And I began to pray and think and talk to my wife about what could I do to bring some margin into my life. And a lot of that was, I had young children. I was on the road a lot. My life basically boiled down to work and family. And those are great things, but I'm a believer that people need that kind of third space to be able to be their best at those other two, And so that for me was the outdoors. And I grew up hunting and fishing. I grew up camping and spending a lot of time in the woods. And even some of my early faith encounters happened outdoors. And so, not in a creation worship experience, but in a creator worship experience. And so I just felt like, man, I think that might be the answer. The answer might be just a few less hours in a tour bus and a few more hours in the woods, basically. And so I just started doing that again. And one of those things involved a connection in South Dakota, where I'm sitting talking to you today. I was playing a concert at a Christian college, Dakota Wesleyan. It's a really neat Christian college in Mitchell, South Dakota. And the chaplain came up to us sitting at catering at lunchtime, the day of the show. And he came up and just said, "Hey, man, I hear you like to hunt and fish." And I was like, "Yeah." And he said, "Have you ever pheasant hunted?" And I was like, "No." And he said, "Would you like to?" And I said, "Yeah. I mean, it'll take, we'll have to start planning now for next year or maybe 2 years from now," because that was just the world I was living in. And he was like, "Well, what time's sound check?" I was like, "Because I don't know. Whenever I want it to be, maybe." So he was like, "I was thinking right now." So we did, man. We got in the college van and went to a gas station. I bought a license and I did my first pheasant hunt before the show that day. And man, I loved it. And I can't remember, Mark, all the details about, but sometime in the next 2 weeks, we had a day off and I ended up at his family farm. And that was a thing where his whole extended family was there. And his mom made this huge meal for us. And man, you remember back in those earliest days when you would come on trips with me, it had that vibe to it, And I've always been a nostalgic guy. I'm kind of drawn to nostalgic things. And that just felt really genuine. It was land that had been in their family for generations, this incredible family. And we ate this great meal. And then we went out hunting and, it was everybody from like 12-year-old grandchildren to 80 and 90-year-old great uncles and great grandfathers. And man, something about that whole thing resonated with me. And so, moving forward at a little faster pace, I met some people that allowed me to be able to come hunting. And I began bringing some friends with me, mainly from the music industry in Nashville, but also some of my pastor friends. And I was sitting around a fire pit that you and I have sat around together. And we were just talking and guys were hanging out. And I just, keep in mind the context of my music career, I'm still doing 150 shows that year, and I just felt like the Lord just said, pay attention to this. It was kind of like a little bit of a marker. And, what it was, it was a kind of a whisper of what was to come. And so I continued to kind of gently pursue that as my music career started to slow down. And we were talking before we got on air, I reached a point where I kind of knew what it would take to make an effort to stay at the level that I was at. And I just didn't really feel like that was the direction I was supposed to go. And so I began spending more time doing these trips. And in many ways, man, I feel like, this is a weird way to say it, but I kind of feel like I made my living on the back of the local church, right? Because, the youth pastor would go before his youth group and say, "Hey, we're going to see the concert and get your money in. We're going to get group tickets," and all the things, And back in the day, if you looked out in the parking lot of one of my shows, you would see 100 church vans and buses. And so, I mean, these people in local ministry were a big part of being the conduit to what I was able to do in music ministry. And I think during that time, God was already kind of preparing a different call and season in my life to do some things that cared for people in ministry. And so that was really the intersection. The intersection was that I had this music career. The local church was deeply supportive of it. I was the product of a local church. So I had a great affinity and affection for people in local ministry. And then the Lord began to call me into caring for people in ministry and kind of leveraging my relational and professional equity to be able to do that. And so that's what became Fellowship Adventures, which is what you and I have spent so much time doing together. And what started in the basement of a little farmhouse in a town of about 500 people in Alpena, South Dakota, it's grown into a pretty significant work where we have properties around the country and we host hundreds of people in ministry every year. And it's just been we'll get into, how that tied into calling and all that, but it's just been kind of a remarkable thing. And what I love, and you've heard me talk about this a lot, I know, is that there are some jobs that you just feel like you never will be able to do anything else, and not to make being a professional musician seem like some kind of unicorn job. It's not, but like if you're in sales, right, you can sell all kinds of things, and if you do IT, you can work for all different kinds of companies and you can create all kinds of different products and services and all of that, If you're like a recording artist and a songwriter, it just feels like what else would you do? It's like athletics, Whenever I can compare myself to a professional athlete, I typically go for that. So, yeah, it's like athletes, right? And I also think it's like people in ministry, because it's this very unique work, and particularly pastoral ministry, and it's just a really odd job, that there's not a lot of people do it. There's not a lot of camaraderie within it. It can be a little bit isolating, and then we can talk about all the slippery slopes of being celebrated for stupid stuff. But what's shocked me, that's probably the right word, is all the stuff that I did in my music life. How many of those things were transferable into this ministry of Fellowship Adventures, where we care for people in ministry? I was learning things I didn't even know. I think, one of the premises of my life, because of our friendship, I believe that whatever we're doing right now, if we're in God's will, He's preparing us for another season simultaneously, which is super cool, So I think we can look to the future without being like, what will I do when this ends? Or what if I lose this job? Or what if this opportunity evaporates? What if I get too old to jump hurdles, or whatever the thing might be? The thought that there's something else out there that is equally fulfilling, that the call is equally profound. Man, I have had so many conversations with particularly professional athletes, and you can sense that they really believe that the very best moment of their life is happening right then. And I wish I could just, grab the shoulders of their, 25-year-old self and just say, bro, if you're a Jesus follower, you are just getting started.
Yeah. It's so true. We talk a lot about that in this platform, or in this context, about the fact that calling never expires, purpose never expires. There's no expiration date on any of those things. It's not biblical to say that it is.
Right.
It's just, and I love that it's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because I've always known that your age is not a thing for you. Like, you're not worried about it. It's a reality we all have to deal with, but
right.
You're always about what's next. You're always about what God is leading you to, what He's preparing you for. And that's super encouraging, I think, to everybody listening to this, because that's sort of the whole point, is like, wherever you are on the spectrum of age, and most of our audience is kind of 50 plus, like, the whole point is you're not done. In fact, there's probably something greater ahead of you. So you're such a great model of that. Well, before we shift gears into that conversation, tell everybody what's going on right now, because and how long, is it 20 years now, or 20 plus years?
Yeah, I think it's about 20 years since we did our first Fellowship Adventures trip. as you know, it was kind of a soft start. We were pretty rustic at the beginning. I was the chef, buddy Andrew, my old buddy. We were the chefs and guides, and we kind of did everything. I was telling somebody the other day, now we have these beautiful tables, and they all look like they're out of a magazine. But back in the day, man, we used one tablecloth the whole week, and it looked like somebody had done surgery on it by the end of the trip.
That's true. But I will say some of my favorite memories of our trips together are those first ones.
No doubt. Same.
I mean,
same.
I'm so glad that I got to be part of it because of just living the story kind of with you guys and through you. And of course, my brother now works with you, and just being so close with what's been happening. And I remember those bunk beds down in the basement. And, but my favorite memory of those trips is when we were hunting out of the back of a pickup truck.
That's right, dude.
You got these cool side by sides and the dog cages. And back then it was like everybody into the truck.
The dog just up there with us. And,
up there with the dog. And then if there was a road rooster, man, we would just chase it with the truck and shoot right out of the back of the truck.
No doubt.
That was so fun. Can't do that from the side by side.
And, even though we've gotten fancier with it, I hope we cooked that same DNA into everything that we do.
Oh man, you do. I was on a hiking trip a couple weeks ago in North Carolina, like a men's wilderness thing with another ministry, and it was great. And the fire pit is always the fun time and hanging out with guys. And man, I was kind of jonesing for some FA action. I was like, man, because it was nice, and it was like 50s at night a couple weeks ago in North Carolina. But I was like, man, need to go to South Dakota, get some real cold, and
no doubt
put on a jacket.
So so we started pheasant hunting with that crew in that little farmhouse, and my dream, and I will say, man, all of like leaning back to some of the things, some of the shared skill sets, being a songwriter is like being a storyteller, whatever, right? I mean, you learn the craft of making things up. Hopefully in Christian music, it's honest and
right, inspired by the Holy Spirit,
but accurate, but you still make stuff up. And so dreaming about things and kind of having vision, it just kind of comes with the territory of doing that. But I think that's, there are a bunch of people in the rooms outside of this one that would, tell you I'm not short on vision. I'm a little short on what do you call it when you actually have to make the stuff or implementation. So I'm high vision, low implementation. But some of the guys that work on our team, including your brother, that are able to take so many of my crazy ideas and turn them into reality. So, I think one of the worst things I can say to our team is, "Hey guys, I have an idea."
Right, I've been thinking.
Their eyes all start twitching, when I say it. But I thought in those early days, the first thing that Fellowship Adventures would do would be build a pheasant hunting lodge, and that ended up being the last thing that we're probably going to do under my tenure. And we ended up starting with building these floating fishing lodges that we go on in Ontario. And, me and a buddy drew them on a napkin. It's so cool that one of the things I love about what we get to do here is we take just crazy ideas and we get to make them happen, And so that was the first thing we did. And so we do that all through the summer. We take a bunch of guys up fishing, and it's an amazing experience. And then I thought, all right, we'll do that. And then we'll start our pheasant hunting place. And that wasn't the way that the Lord led. We needed a home base. We found an incredible ranch in northern Nebraska that afforded us a chance to do deer hunting and turkey hunting there, and then have a big warehouse for all of our gear. And we bought it in January of 2020. And so, in May of 2020, we were headed to Canada, fishing all summer. And then the Canadian border was going to close for 2 weeks. And, as we know, that closed for almost 2 years, and so we had to pivot. And what we did there, like, almost everybody that's listening to this, we we made changes, and it drove forward a renovation at our place in Nebraska. And I love, this is just another testimony to the way God works. I always call like all the stuff we do, this is like first grade stuff, but it's kind of like an iceberg, because it's like whenever we do something, I like see this little part that's above the water, and I have a hunch there's stuff below the water, but I never know what it is, and so the Lord just reveals more of that to us. So now one of the biggest things that FA does is we do these retreat trips in Nebraska. We call them trifectas. We off-road and we golf and we shoot guns and we fish, we do all this stuff. And it turned into like this like incredible thing that we do now. And, had I not had to figure out how to deal with a cancellation, I would have never come up with the idea. And so, so now, like when stuff goes wrong, I'm not saying I'm like, woo, things went wrong, but I get there's a glimmer of anticipation in me. Because, I've been a Christ follower long enough now that I know that he ain't going to leave me out in the cold,
That's right.
And that often the changes are the very things the unexpected changes are the things that lead me to what I'm supposed to do. And that's eventually what got us here to where I'm sitting. So I'm sitting in Presho, South Dakota. It's a little town in what we call West River, South Dakota, on the west side of the Missouri. And 3 years ago, we bought 800 acres here, and that's attached to a bunch of other ground. It's never been, and dude, this is what I don't want to project our friendship onto those of you listening, because Mark and I go way back and we have a lot of deep friendship and history. But, man, there was something very specific that I was looking for. And that was the right place in the state, the perfect pheasant habitat. I wanted a piece of land that had never been built on. And I wanted us to be able to do our own thing. And I didn't know that that's exactly what the Lord had in store for us, but I'm a big believer that if our ambition is to find God's calling and stay in that flow, then let's ask for what we want.
Yep.
And then be open to God's leading. And so in this particular case, he gave me what I asked for. And that was, this land is 800 acres. It's only been used for pheasant hunting for the last 30 years. So it's like this incredible, it's like a country club for pheasant hunting is basically it. And there's no buildings on it, but there was this perfect building site. And so through the faithful support, Fellowship of Interest is a nonprofit, through the faithful support of a bunch of people that caught this vision, man, we were able to raise some money and do this incredible thing. So we built about, I don't even know, 10, 20, almost 40,000 square feet of buildings. There's there's a big storage dog kennel operation. And then we have 2 lodges, and you have to look it up online. You all can see the pictures of it. And, and there's just you learn stuff as you go, right? About what makes an experience best and how to serve people best. And part of that, man, goes back to me going on trips back in the day. And, people would want me to come on different ministry trips, and they would go on outdoor adventure trips, like what you went on. And I learned what I liked and didn't like. And I learned when I felt worked or cornered, or, because sometimes you get in those situations, right? You think it's just going to be a getaway, and then there ends up being some kind of agenda or whatever. And so, a lot of what informs the decisions we make here is what not to do.
Sure.
So, which again, age and experience bring to you. So so we're about 2 weeks from our first group getting here, which is equally exciting and terrifying for those of you that have ever built anything. We went from a completely rural build on undeveloped land, and we built these 3 buildings. And, we're talking 25 bedrooms, 30 bathrooms, and we went from groundbreaking to occupancy in 11 months. So it's just that includes building through the middle of a South Dakota winter.
I was going to say there was some winter. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And another thing, I love that, we can talk about growing older because it's hard to help. Can I get a collective amen out there in cyber world that it's hard to get young people to appreciate the wisdom that comes with age and experience? Because man,
Yeah.
it really does. And one of those things that I have learned along the way is there's somebody that knows how to do everything.
That's
You
right.
just have to find them. And when you can find them, man, it is so like, can you lay concrete in the middle of the winter when it's 10 degrees? Turns out you can. They're just places that have, whatever. They got ways to heat it and chemicals to put in it.
Yeah.
And there's every kind of truck. And anyway, it's so fascinating. And we should do a whole nother podcast on trade work because I am so into trade work right now because I've watched hundreds and hundreds of people do all kinds of work here. So yeah,
it's unbelievable. Well, that's so exciting, and I can't wait to see it myself. It's just going to be incredible, and to watch you on this journey has been really, really fun.
You can probably hear saws and crap in the background. I'm sorry for the audio is janky, but I'm literally sitting in a construction zone. So
I was talking to Michael John, my brother who works with Geoff, last week or 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about we just put 25 or 30 or 50 beds, whatever it was, together and building furniture, and then go to Nebraska and run a different trip down there, and then come back and work at the new ranch. And so super fun. Well, you kind of teed this up really well, talking about aging, talking about getting older, wisdom, and all that. When in your life was that point where you were like, man, I still feel good, but I'm not as young as I used to be. What was that aha moment for you?
Yeah, I think probably the first one that I remember was, and this builds into a whole part of kind of my worldview about calling, obedience, and work, and all those things. And so, like in my music career, we were for the most of it, we were a band, and we toured and played shows, and I kind of feel like, particularly in Christian music, I feel like there's a little bit of a shelf life to that. And it's all tied to calling. But the way I would say it is kind of my internal speak was I just didn't want to stay too long with the party, I didn't want to be the dude, in the muffin top leather pants that was like, you were awesome 25 years ago, that. Right. And so, and man, I had and I think we'll get to this in the course of the conversation, but, I had a kind of a slow start in Christian music. I recorded for a couple of different labels. It took a while for me to gain traction, which is kind of unusual. You're either kind of hot out of the gate or, but how else do you get a 10-year overnight success? That's what it takes. It takes a few missed starts, but, I ended up at, a label called Forefront Records. And, I think I was the second artist that they signed, but, Forefront and now they've been absorbed into the EMI music system, but for over 20 years, it was a unicorn in Christian music. We had a lot of different artists there, but there were 4 core artists that were there almost its entire history. And that was us, Rebecca St. James, Audio Adrenaline, and DC Talk. And, as I say those names, all of our memories go back to what iconic careers and what a big part of just a lot of people's kind of journey, the music of those artists has been. And so I think that, and, like the Audio A. So my first headline tour, Audio A, was my opening act.
Okay.
And so when I signed, when I turned 30, I think Rebecca St. James maybe turned 20 or 25, whatever, you know what I mean? And so we had some generational stuff happening at that label. And so I just prayed that the Lord would give me, wisdom to know when to kind of wrap that. And I felt like he did that. I felt like, and I suspected that I had another chapter as a kind of singer songwriter artist beyond the band culture thing that I was a part of, and which it proved that I did, and he allowed that. But that would have been the first bit. I think there were times when. So if you don't know, I can give you the 30-second version. Being a recording artist that writes your own music is pretty hard work. It's not ditch digging hard work, but from a professional standpoint, it's a lot. You write 20 or 30 songs to find 10 or 12 that you're going to record. The recording process is a months long situation. While you're doing it, you're out playing concerts on the weekends. You finish the record. It doesn't come out for 3 months or something crazy back in the day. So I think this is before digital music. So nobody's posting anything on YouTube or TikTok or anything. You're just you're waiting, a single goes to radio. You hope it does good.
Yeah.
And then you go on tour,
Yeah. And if you're a fan like we were and up and coming wannabe artists ourselves, for us, it was go to the Christian music store, look at all the flats on the wall and go, oh, that guy looks cool.
Right.
Because the Christian radio back then, unless you were in probably a big metro area, it wasn't that great. They weren't playing.
No doubt.
You didn't hear a lot of your stuff like they were playing gospel music. So it was hard to find.
And this Christian music it was back in those days. And I still think today it's a town by town thing. There never was enough of an international platform to gain like national momentum,
Right.
And so you won every crowd, every night, every town, and I think, so then you go on tour, and for artists that were in our lane, you do a 50 or 60 show tour in the spring, which is basically February to May.
Right.
And then all summer you'd play Christian music festivals. So, if you were a Christian music fan and you're older than 45 years old, you were probably at a festival somewhere that I sang at.
Atlanta Fest, baby.
Yeah. And I played every amusement park, Disneyland, Disney World, SeaWorld, Busch Gardens, every Six Flags, all of them, and because, Christian Music Days were some of their biggest attended days because we as a faith community are super faithful and supportive, which is one of the things I feel most affectionate about towards the people that listen to my music. But while you're doing, those 150 shows, you're writing the next album, and so it's a lot of, we had recording studios set up in dressing rooms and in the back lounge of the bus. And so it's anyway, and then you start it all over again. And then when the single comes out, you go visit radio stations and you play your song in a boardroom to the people that are decision makers and, hope that they hear what you hear and put it on the radio. And so, it's a lot. And so I just, I had kind of I had two pivotal points, and we can talk later specifically about those. But but I reached a point where I was like, you know what? I think the Lord is saying, the party's wrapping up. You might want to head to the exit. And so I went to the band and I was like, all right, guys, this is your 1 year notice. So a year from this, I knew what our last show was going to be. It was a big Billy Graham event in Florida. And I was like, this would be the perfect place to end it. And it was a year away. And so it was awesome. We used every town as a kind of a farewell tour, and really had a great, and you've probably seen farewell tours can really drag on, because in the words of Bob Hartman from Petra one day, he told me, he goes, man, if I'd have known what announcing retirement was going to do for my career, I would have done it a long time ago.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody comes out.
Right. They want to see you. So it was great. But that was that point. I remember the last night, the last show with The Distance. We were playing in Florida, and it was super emotional and all of that. And I think I said, I'm getting too old for this. I think I said those exact words, and we've all said them about something usually in kidding. And part of that, Mark, was driven by, passion. And there were, decades where I was just like, let's go,
Sure.
Australia, yep. Europe, yep. Wherever, let's just go, And my wife was totally down with it. We had a rhythm with our children. It was all because we were all called to it, But that would have been so that was the first thing. And then there was,
And how old were you, Jeff? How old were you when that happened?
Yeah, it was, let's see, 38, 39. 40 was kind of a number back then for that kind of music. It had some, parallels with professional athletes. But yeah. And I remember maybe a month or two later, I went to, I'm trying to think who it was. It was it's like Mercy Me, or I went to some big show, and I didn't miss it, man. I thought I was going to go and think, daggum.
Yeah.
I should have hired that production company, or I should have, if I'd done the tour, that's the way I would have done it. But I didn't. So that was a really meaningful thing to me. It felt like I had finished that chapter.
Yeah. You actually were able to let it go. Yeah. I remember as a worship leader, worship pastor, having that same moment when I had kind of stepped away from that world, and I really, because it's sort of a young man's game ish. Yeah. I mean, but there's just that point where you sit under somebody else, or you go to church somewhere else, and you just kind of go, yeah, I'm glad. I know they've been here since 5:30 this morning. I know they've been doing, just, and you're like, I woke up an hour ago and I just rolled in.
Yeah. And I hope people listening, I hope this is a job, man. It's a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a cool job, and you get to do neat stuff, and it opens a crazy number of doors. And so it comes with its own, like everything every person's doing, it comes with its own unique set of challenges, but it can be a little harder thing to let go of. Because, man, you guys know we find our identity in all kinds of stuff, and we can make everything in our life an idol, everything, including humility and all generosity, all the things that seem like they'd be really hard to, we can still screw those up.
Yeah, we find a way.
And man, and I don't want to get ahead of your questions, but for most people, most artists, and I think, and as it relates to, I think it's transferable to all kinds of jobs, the ride up is hard and fun. Your time on top is kind of, it's shockingly unfulfilling because, in fact, the ride up is the most fun. I was talking with the guys from Audio Adrenaline the other day, and we both went on to tour in pretty comfortable environments. We had all the accoutrement of being able to tour well, but we were just laughing about the first tour we did was in an airport shuttle. There were like 12 of us in it, and dude, the health department would have never approved our conditions. Excuse me. And so, but just how it literally was the most fun that we ever had. It's like you and I talking about the earliest days of our hunting trips where, we didn't have any of the beautiful stuff that we have now. And yet there was something really unforgettable about it. So, and then, when you're on top, for whatever season you get to be, there's always somebody whispering in your ear about, like the phrase that the people in my world love to use was next level. Let's get to the next level. Let's get to, and I'm like, okay, I don't even know what that means. It just means more, right? It just means more. More singles, more sales, more awards, more people in the seats, more reach, more impact, more, and then you start the ride down, and that's where, I also tell, we do these big off-roading trips, we ride these high performance ATVs, and, they can get you in trouble, but, going uphill is not the hard part. It's going downhill. That's the hard part. So to use that analogy, it can get a little jiggy going downhill, and so way easier to get in the ditch man, that's a good analogy. We could be writing a song right now.
There's some gravity happening on that side.
That idea. And so, and man, that's when you find out who your friends are. That's when you find out where your identity is planted. That's when you find out how much of your job mattered to your family, and how much of your vocational life became an identity to your wife, all those kinds of things. For me, God just, was generous to help me identify some of that stuff early.
Mm.
And so, my inner circle of friends has been lightly populated with artists, been heavily populated with what we like to refer to as regular people.
Normal people.
Normal people. So if you're listening, that sounds so bougie. I don't mean for it to. It's just, yeah. And so
what it means is you realize you're a normal guy too.
Right.
And
that's right, man.
That's what people love to hear.
And my wife, man. I'm married to a lady that was like, I remember coming home one time, we were like, it was banging. We were in the heyday of our career, and she was pregnant, and just, she was, in her words, gigantic. And she's a very small, petite.
Yes, she's very tiny.
5'4", 115 pound kind of girl. And she was like, she looked like she was 90% baby. There was just a lot going on there. And we had a little child. We had a 2-year-old or 18 month, whatever. I remember her coming home one time and going, "Hey, I know you've been out there changing lives, but there are some diapers that need to be changed." and some reference to the amount of dog crap in the backyard.
Right. But we're back.
But having those, I know it sounds silly, man, but having those people in your life, I think, and as this ties into aging, I think that has been so critical. Small circle, authentic people that will go there with you. Yeah. And most importantly, people who do not care what you do for a living,
right,
or what your resources are, that they care about who you are as Christ follower, husband, dad, friend. And that's where have been so blessed. Yeah.
Yeah, you really have. There's a men's group I'm part of from our church that we meet every week, and I'm pretty sure I'm the oldest guy there by a bit. And a couple of weeks ago, we were meeting, and some of the younger guys, we just got on some topics, and conversations started flowing, and we were talking about influences and how important it is to find the right people in your life, because it's so easy to get surrounded. Even family can be negative. I mean, I'm really blessed, and you are too, to have great family, but everybody doesn't have that, and sometimes they're the worst ones, and all the negative voices in your ear and all that kind of stuff. And our founding pastor likes to say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
No doubt.
And I just think there's so much truth in that statement. It makes all the difference in the world. No doubt. Well, you said there were two big moments. One was am I too old to do this? And let me back out. Yeah. Was there another? And it's interesting that you say your age there, because for most people that we interview, it's more like 50s ish is when they start to kind of feel like, okay, I'm getting older. I feel it in my body, whatever. I had to start wearing readers or whatever.
Right.
But as an artist, you were in such a hyper focused, youthful thing. So it's interesting that you had that sort of aha moment earlier, which makes perfect sense.
And it's interesting. And I'll get to how I feel kind of about things now. But the first one, and again, I think it's a good observation, man, that in certain careers it happens sooner than others. And music would definitely be one of those, because the first one came even earlier. I signed my first deal when I was like 23.
Okay.
And so I made 3 albums with the Benson Company, which was awesome. It's a company Bill Gaither and other people started back in the day. And, we had artists like Sandy Patty and Carmen and DeGarmo and Key.
Oh, yeah.
So, it was pretty iconic,
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up listening to Christian, not once I got into college, listening to Christian music. And, like DeGarmo Key was one of the bands I loved. And I ended up on the same label with them, which was like super awesome. Right. And so they did that. And, I'd made 3 kind of average selling albums and with average airplay, and Sparrow Records was they were kind of the hot label at that time. And, they had, Whiteheart and Steven Curtin Chapman and Switchfoot. And I can't even think of all the other, there was a bunch. It was super cool. BB and CC Winans and, and so I got the chance to sign with them, and I'd finished my deal. And, record contracts are kind of like sporting contracts. They have options to them, and the label can pick that option up, or they can pass on it, or you reach the end of a deal and the artist then has a choice whether to renegotiate with the company they're with or to move to another one. I finished my deal at Benson. I was able to go to Sparrow. I made 2 albums with them. They sold a little bit better, but they didn't sell great. And I got at the end of the option there, at the end of that contract, they had another option to make another record, and they released me, which is like getting kicked off the team.
Right.
And so
you're fired.
There is no way to spin those moments in your life as being great.
Yeah.
You sit in an office, and this is where a lot of people a lot of artists really struggle, because, 2 or 3 years before, you're sitting there and they're trying to sign you, and they're telling you how anointed you are, and how God's just been working your life. And if any of those people are listening, I genuinely believed when you said that stuff to me, you meant it. I believe. But I also knew, because of the way I grew up and not being raised in a very artistic home, that what you were saying was that as long as we sold enough, I was anointed. I knew that's what you were saying. And that somehow, once sales declined, that anointing had departed.
Right.
So, And so that was that first moment. Because, I'd been at it for almost 10 years. And, Jan and I sat down and said, it's been pretty amazing. I mean, we didn't like break out, but I made 5 albums. We've got to see the world, and we have young kids, and, maybe this is the time. I'm late 20s, and I'm like, 30s right around the corner. That's super old. And so, yeah. And so that was our first, that was our first moment. So we had a really serious, was this our run, and should we be done with it? And I can tell you, man, cause I got nothing to lose, telling you now, I'm in it. I mean, I laid it down, and, cause and everybody that's watching and listening, you guys know we can say we're laying it down, or you can really lay it down, and you can say, I'm going to give this to you, Lord. I'm going to trust you with it. And wherever you lead me, I'm going to go. But we straight up did that. And so when the Lord kind of opened that door for me to sign for Forefront, it felt like it was on really obedient terms. Because man, there was no reason to go there. I mean, I went from the largest label in Christian music to literally the smallest label. It felt like going back to like single A ball after playing in the big leagues. And little did I know, but it was going to become one of the greatest label franchises in the history of Christian music, But it was obedience that led me there, even when I was wondering if it was still viable.
Yeah.
Even when, and that's what kind of ties into the way that I feel today, is because the Lord used that to remind me that it doesn't matter what it looks like on paper, that we can just take these steps of obedience, man. We end up where he wants us to be. It doesn't always mean that it's going to lead to success in that context. Those are fun stories. I love being able to tell you that, going to that label, that the next album sold more than all the 5 albums before it combined. So
Wow.
to Sparrow Records, thank you. Think about that, dude. That's just a reminder, right?
Sure.
If those folks had not released me, right, and I go home and I'm like, babe, just got kicked off the team. Nobody picked me at kickball. If that hadn't happened, right, the rest of it hadn't happened. And man, I just pray for all of us that when we go through that kind of bump in the road, because I got a bunch of friends, I have a buddy, 55, just lost his job because, he was making too much money and they basically hired 3 people for less money than they were paying him to do. I know that's a familiar story to some of you guys listening, as that kind of middle and upper management world starts to dissolve a little bit, but man, he didn't have his entire life invested in his career, and so when I think, and what I pray for is that perspective now, that because we all have those stories, man. It's like,
sure.
If I'd have married that girl, or if I'd have married that guy, or if I would have, if I'd have taken that job, or if I hadn't lost that, all those stories. And yet when we get into today's version, then we freak out about what the future holds.
I know. It's like, when are we going to learn?
I think it's a big part of the enemy's attack, because we're just, we just don't trust. I'm fine without trusting people. If you don't like to trust people, don't trust them, whatever. I feel like you should probably trust a few people. Pastor's probably good. Financial advisor's probably good. Your spouse be good. Beyond that, a couple of friends. But man, let's trust Jesus on this thing. Try and stay in and be confident that he is taking care of us. Yeah.
Always at work, whether we see it or not, or realize it's happening or not. And I've got so many stories like that too, where I left somewhere I thought I was going to stay and upset about it. And then, next thing I know, it falls apart and this other thing happens. Like, God saved me from that or rescued me from that. Or like we were talking before we started recording, when I was trying to decide whether or not to start a new venture of my own or go to work somewhere else. And things on paper should have worked out a certain way, and they just kept not working out. And Jinda, my wife, she's always telling me, or when we first met, she would tell me, when things like that happen, you can almost guarantee God is doing something, because in the world's eyes, this should have happened. This should have worked. It's like he's blocking. He's trying to redirect. And as we get older, you have that whole track record where you just look back and you say, I've seen this happen over and over and over and over again.
Yep.
And it is hard when you're in the middle of something, you don't really, faith is easy to talk about, but until you need it,
That's right. Yeah, dude. It's like, and that's the same. That's how I feel about community. I always tell my kids, I'm like, guys, you can't create community when you need it. You got to have it before you need it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the same thing. Because that has been, I think, part of me navigating this part of my life, having a small, faithful community of people around me. That's been one of the most important pillars of what God's used. Because, and you referenced to the fact that, I haven't really slowed down. I think that's true. And I don't know, you probably get into the whole concept of retirement and some of that, and I just, man, I can't find a biblical concept.
There's not.
And we all know people, that are, particularly if somebody's in that kind of mid 70s lane and they quit their job and they think that there is enough golf to play and enough beaches to sit on. And we watch often, right, their health spirals out. I don't know. There's something about, working and I think that I don't think that the church in general has done a good enough job of kind of teaching around the value of work. And and there's kind of this guilt that a lot of us carry of I work too much, or on my deathbed, nobody ever says they wish they were, and which is true, I
True.
guess.
Yeah.
Which is spend more time in the office. I get that. But
Yeah.
that part about, particularly as as we start to empty nest, and our kids, my youngest daughter just graduated from college last year, and so, my wife and I kind of sat down, and she was a little bit like, I don't really want to live at the beach all year, so if you got stuff you feel like God's calling you to, you should go for it, and I think I love that bit. I do think we need margin. I am a believer in a work-life balance, even though your brother would tell me I'm probably not being completely truthful just in this season.
Well, believing in it and doing it are two different things.
Longing for it, hoping for it.
Right.
But man, there's a dude named, I don't know if he said it, a guy named Mike Yaconelli. He was the guy, if anybody's ever part of the whole youth specialties world. He's a pastor and teacher, an awesome guy. And man, he used this analogy. I'll give you two quotes of two guys I love. He passed away, but it was like, what did he say? He wants to collapse going across the finish line,
Sure.
and that kind of thing. And I love that. I love that imagery. And then one of my spiritual mentors and one of my dear close friends is Wes Stafford.
Mm-hmm.
You've met Wes. He's the president emeritus of Compassion International and has walked a lot with me. And he's a board member of Fellowship Adventures. And I love his, he's 74 or 5. I should probably confirm that. Sorry, Wes, if I hit you high, I can Google it real quick. Mid-70s, we're going to go with.
Sure.
And, super great shape and just, traveling, crushing it. And he said that he wants his life to be gloriously interrupted. I love that imagery.
That's so cool.
And yeah, man, instead of that sitting around waiting, I would just soon keep going. And one of the, part of the work that we do where we have so many pastors come on these trips is, I see like 3 different layers, and this transcends beyond just pastoral ministry, but I think we'll all kind of hear ourselves in one lane. We have young guys who, because of the culture and just the really a lot to do with social media, they can ascend so quickly. And so you find these guys who are pastors of these mega churches. They're in their early 30s, talk about imposter syndrome and not having any idea what they're really doing and faking it till they make all those things.
Yeah.
That is at work in some of these guys' lives who are very, very well known and very popular, And then you get the guys that are kind of in the heart of their career and they're thinking about what's next. I don't know, like some of my athlete friends tell me that, like when they retire, you're out of the club because current players don't really want to talk about retirement because it makes them think about this thing being over. And I think we all find that sometimes. You kind of look at the people that have moved beyond their kind of general life vocation and you're like, I don't really want to think about what's next, But I believe, man, if you kind of like we were talking, if you look where it's not just the end, it's not like I'm going to do this job and then I am put out to pasture. All of a sudden, thinking about the future becomes exciting and engaging. And
exactly.
I find, like for the guys in ministry, they look at that season that they never dreamt that they would have. And that's what I'm having the pleasure of experiencing right now. And I really always encourage people. It's like, man, just keep dreaming, about what is next for you. And because the crazy thing, man, is that those guys on the front end of their career, whatever that vocation is, a lot of what they're longing for is wisdom from people that have done it,
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that the church does an awesome job of honoring, Church in America does an awesome job of honoring older people.
Yeah.
I don't know that as generally culturally in America, we do a great job of that. I've traveled to a lot of places in the world where aging citizens are treated better and have a better uh, they're just they have a more important spot at the table culturally, and I would love to see the church do more of that. We've done a few trips where we've had super young pastors and then older pastors, and that connection has been remarkable because the young guys are longing for mentorship, and the older guys are wondering if they still have significance. And so I think we can help each other on both ends of that spectrum. But I think it takes more effort as we get older. It takes more effort for us to lean back. I don't think you walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, I'll be your mentor."
Right.
But I think if you are open to it, you will find that there are people longing for that. And Matt, that's where all of that experience and maybe all of that toolkit that you think might be up on the shelf for good, you get to pull all that stuff down and start using it again. And that's inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. One of the guests we had a couple of weeks ago was talking about that. He made the point that we, as we get older, we need that younger generation. We need to be learning from them and engaging with them, but they need us too,
That's
and
right.
sometimes I agree with you. I have found that they are hungry for it if you just make yourself available. And to your point, not inviting yourself into their life, but just saying, if it's a small group or whatever it is, like just encouraging them, coaching them. I can't tell you how many times I've had guys reach out to me after a session, like a group thing. Hey, can we go get coffee? Can we hang out? Like they just want to talk. They just want somebody to listen to them. They want somebody to speak some life into them or give them permission, whatever the thing is. They're so hungry for it. And I think it's our responsibility as we get older to make ourselves available to that and create, again, not inviting ourselves in, but creating opportunities for that to happen. Yeah. Let's don't sit back and wait for them to approach. Sometimes they will, but let's drive it a little bit. Let's take some responsibility and some ownership because we do have so much to offer, and it's fascinating. You mentioned this, so because of what you do and because you are hosting and you're around so many leaders, pastors, business people, etc., of all ages, around that magical campfire when guys are really opening up and sharing, what do you hear the older guys talking about? What are they worried about? What are they afraid of? What are they excited about? And what are those conversations like? If you kind of take them all and aggregate them into one thing, what's a couple of topics that you hear the most, and how do you encourage them in those moments?
If I think about like reoccurring themes that come up, and man, I'll say a couple things here that I self-admittedly have not fully processed, and unless I typically wouldn't talk about it in a forum like this, but I think this is the right one to do it in, and I'm going to struggle a little bit to put the right language to it, but I find that as particularly guys that have either been Christians for the majority of their lives or have long-term relationships with the Lord, and even more so people that have been in ministry, there is this there's this softening that happens to us. It's why we cry at every great beer commercial during Christmas. You know what I'm saying? You get it, right? We get, yeah. That there's this softening that happens, and there's like this kind of justice bone, as I see in a lot of people, begins to soften. And it is not people giving up. It is not a process of compromise. I believe it's a maturing in it, and that there's a wisdom that comes with the way that they look at life. As we get older, right? We experience a much, our experiences obviously grow. But as you get older, one of the unique things is you begin to see the outcomes of the things that you cared about, especially the things that we worried about. And when it comes to your children, to your marriages, to your professional life, to your health, and my experience is I listen to people as they get older, they begin to realize in a more tangible way how little control they have over things.
Mm.
And I think that that's part of the beauty as we begin to let go of stuff, that the day comes when we breathe our last breath. That's our final release, right?
Mm.
If we are if we pass in a way that allows us to be able to have any kind of awareness of it, that feels to me like that final, like, the ultimate open-handed thing. And but there's all these small steps along the way. And if you have more than one kid and you think about how your youngest kid was raised versus your oldest kid, right?
Yeah.
And, I'm the youngest of my family by a long ways. I don't even know if I had parents. I think it was basically just like dinner's now, get home safe, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, totally. And when I think of how my oldest son, Josh, if you hear this, bud, I apologize for the freaking helicopter parents that we were over you. Ashley, my youngest, I hope you came out good, babe. How you doing? It's like we learn to let go of that stuff because we begin to understand what really matters, and I think watching a lot of guys in ministry as they age, 40,000 foot view, you would think they were becoming more liberal in their kind of cultural and theological look,
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is they're beginning to understand grace and freedom in a more profound way. Don't hear me say that they're softening the edges of their Jesus-centric belief systems. They are not. But they are realizing that it might be okay to have a cigar around the fire. It might be okay to drink a bourbon in moderation, and that it's not going to destroy your life, that your kid that went on a prodigal journey is not lost to Jesus, that he's still at the end of the driveway waiting, and that we get to share our stories together of how God redeems these things and how the stories don't always have the outcome that we want them to have, but there's a camaraderie in that, and that's why community is so critical as we get older, because I feel like there's a tendency to isolate a little bit, right? Because let's face it, man, a little less energy, a little less, interested in spending the days that we have left listening to somebody that we don't like or being around somebody that we don't, whatever.
Right.
But man, I think if you stay in that community, you're going to find people that are right where you are, because how great is it, when you have a kid that's struggling and you sit next to somebody and their kids are perfect, well, the truth is they're liars,
right?
And you're not lying, so get in a room with some people that aren't lying so that you can figure out and you all have this shared experience,
Yeah.
And I think that when we stay in community, because this is my last soapbox, this isolation thing, man, isolation, I believe that's like, if we could see Satan's top 10, I think isolation would be on
I agree.
his 10 commandments, man,
Yep.
of trying to, to use a good Western cattle phrase from out here, he tries to cut us out of the herd. And then we've all had friends that this has happened to, and maybe you're watching and listening and that feeling. Every time I have a friend that takes their life, that's what I think. I think that the enemy was successful in isolating them to a point where they didn't believe that people were being truthful with them when they said they loved them and cared about them. And so I think as we get older, man, that almost natural desire to isolate, because there are days, y'all, where I'm just like, I am so sick of talking to people and I'm so sick of hearing my own voice and I just want to be alone, and sometimes I'm like, I get it, man. I get it why people drop out and go just be by themselves on an island somewhere.
Yeah.
But that's where I just feel like the Lord is saying he's inviting us back in to something. And that's kind of what I try and think about and try and stay in community and friendship with people like you, brother. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we talk about the fire a lot. That's what you see in those moments, because men are the worst. Men are the worst at community. They're the worst at sharing. Yeah. Women have that gift for it. But
no doubt.
But man, when you get guys in that moment and they see other men who are being vulnerable, who are being honest, to use your word, it just unlocks something. There's still a little probably fear or trepidation there, but it gives them permission to do it. And I think, where Scripture tells us to confess our sins to one another and all the things about community and don't forsake the gathering of believers, all the stuff. You're right. The number one trick I think of the devil is get us alone. Just get us, because then you get in your head and you start spinning out and the thoughts take over and we don't take our thoughts captive and we're basically just disobeying what he gives us a perfect roadmap for it. We don't do it. And then next thing you know, you get that call or you hear somebody who's gone off the deep end or like it's just, and you're like, I haven't seen them in like a year. I mean, you just start to do the math and connect the dots. So 100%.
And you guys 100%. Know, as we get older, if as we gain margin professionally, or if you retire and you gain a ton of margin, as we have more financial independence, those are things that can enable isolation,
Sure.
And so, so some of it's even pushing against societal trends that would say, dude, you've been working your whole life for this freedom. Take advantage of it, go travel the world, which I love travel. It'd be awesome.
Sure.
But if you're traveling the world so you don't have to be with anybody, that's not a good call. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are definitely those moments when a little personal retreat is what the doctor ordered.
For sure. Yeah.
But it doesn't need to become a habit. And we see it too with people like when their spouse dies and they don't have any other community.
Yeah.
And then then they die right after. I think that's almost always what it is they just, no one else was challenging them.
Yeah.
And to your point, we've talked a lot about 50s, 60s, and 70s being the opportunity in the decades where you really have the opportunity for the most impact because you have margin, because you have some extra probably financial resources, you've got time, you've got wisdom and experience. And so the very thing that should be a strength where we're pouring into other people, again, if we let the enemy get in there and use it, he'll just turn it the other way. And it's something to really be aware of for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you talked about Wes and some guys like that. Who would you say are the people who are the most influential in your life, or that you're learning from about how to age well, about how to finish strong? Who are some models that you have, and what are they teaching you?
Yeah, Wes would certainly be one of those guys. Wes Stafford, guy named Scotty Smith. Scotty's my pastor. If lightning strikes this building, and I punch out before the podcast ends, he's the guy that do my funeral, and he's in his early 70s and is just a really thoughtful guy that knows me and loves me. And then from afar, I think I'm a big product of Tim Keller's teaching, and the way he died, man, just like a boss, man, right? Just sick and grinding it and hopeful, but not weird about it. And just, that's been super moving to me. Pastor in Florida, a guy named Joby Martin, pastor of the Church of 1122. Joby's a generation younger than me, and but has been kind of that good push. He's pushing up, which has been really encouraging to me. His friendship and teaching has been pretty formative in the last 10 years of my life. And so he's a great guy. If you haven't, he has a great podcast called Deepen. There's a couple that he does. You can just Google his name. So that'd be some of the guys. And then a close circle of friends, your brother being one of them, along with some of the guys that serve on the board of Fellowship Adventures are, guys that I kind of grind it day to day with. And, they're all guys like Greg Ham. Greg's a music manager in Nashville.
Yeah.
Also on our board, one of my lifelong friends. And I think if you guys like my music, Steven Curtin Chapman's been my lifelong best friend. And, he's probably the dude that we've lived life together for the last 30 plus, raised our kids together and all of that. But he, he really loves Jesus, and he cares about the people around him. And he's been a great friend to me. He's my 3:00 call, and 3 a.m. caller. And he, the Lord's, that's just been a really, I pray that everybody would have the kind of friendship that he and I have been able to have, because it's, it's been through thick and thin, no doubt.
Yeah, I was thinking about you guys. This has probably been a year ago. I texted you. We had a little text thing. We were in Franklin for a little weekend, and I think you guys were out of town. We were trying to see you guys, but we went to eat at that diner, that place where you did the well digger stuff.
Yeah.
And as we sat there, I was like, "This is where they sign the adoption papers. This is where they," because you've told those stories so many times about
a lot of life happened in that cafe.
Yeah.
A lot of biscuits were destroyed, and a lot of life happened. That's right. Yeah.
Well, the last thing I want to ask you, and I'll let you go, is, with this incredible life that you've led, this career that you've had, and your faith journey's been so strong. As you're getting older, what would you say is what are you learning about your faith? How's it growing? How's it changing? Maybe something's changed in it that's you didn't used to be this way, now it's this way. What would you say your big takeaway in the faith department is right now?
I mean, and I think I alluded to it a little bit. Man, I just, I used to, and, sometimes, we don't have perspective, right, till we can look back on it. But man, I really tried hard to help the Lord out and stuff.
And he appreciates it.
Yeah, because he needs it. And, this isn't the perfect, spiritual or biblical language around it, but, and I think this is kind of a COVID takeaway.
Sure.
Because, music career got so many of us that were really vocationally impacted by it. The music business was super, you just turned the switch off one day. And it even impacted the stuff we did at Fellowship Adventure some. And I can remember just being moping around and what the heck, and then it's funny, as you get older, I don't know if you guys watching and listening do this, but you think about all these, stupid sayings that you used to say that turn out to really be true, so one for me was COVID didn't catch God off guard.
Right.
It was like, oh my
That's
God.
Right. What are we going to do now?
Yeah. And it helped me kind of get to a point where just when I wake up in the morning, God is at work, right? And there's his great sovereign will being revealed in the world. And man, I just want to be in that flow. I want to get up and be in that flow and think about what is happening today in my orbit that God is a part of, and how do I participate in that? Scripturally, that is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 for me. That is, trust in the Lord with all your heart, don't lean on your understanding, which is so hard, right? Because I got a lot of wisdom, bro. I've been at it a long time. I know, whatever. Literally, God's just saying, lay that down and trust me, and I'll take you where you need to go, And so I think because the kind of ironic part of being a Christian so long is that this drive for knowledge and understanding and wisdom turns out to look a lot different to me than I thought it was going to. It is not necessarily just an accumulation of knowledge. It's an accumulation of experience. And accumulating experiences teach you how things really are. And that is that people lose their kids, and people lose their jobs, and guys have affairs on their wives that you trusted and believed in, and that the world is not fair, and terrible people get celebrated and good people get ignored, and all those things that you're not going to necessarily learn academically. You're going to learn them experientially. And that's where I feel like God's great gift is, as we're able to walk with him for a long time, is you begin to see him in the minutia of real life, and not just, kind of the spiritual axioms of how things should be. And because, right, our faith journey, we sing enough worship songs about, it can be like really celebratory, which is awesome. And I love celebrating and want to, me, I love to
Sure.
I'm a celebratory guy, I'm all about a good time. But this idea that I just feel like I'm getting a more accurate look at how God interacts with us and with the world. And more than ever, I am convinced that not knowing the answers, not having the solution, does not lead to confusion and weakness. It leads to dependency. And that's my thing, man. My thing is I'm going to fall into his arms, and even though part of me says he's going to drop me this time, even though he never has, I'm going to continue to put one foot in front of the other. Right. It's what was it? Was it Raiders Lost Ark where the bridge is invisible and you can't see it? You start to, it's like that, right? Take those steps, trust that he's going to be there for you. But this idea that he's at work in the world and I don't have to get up and recreate the good news. I just got to find out what he's doing and try and be a part of it.
Yeah, man, that's so good. Well, dude, it's been awesome. I wish we had 10 more hours to talk, and I can't get enough of it, but I so appreciate you and the role you've played in my life and my family's life, my brothers, and just, man, I love you. Appreciate you so much.
Great pleasure. I love you, Mark. Thanks for doing this, man, and thanks for encouraging people of a certain age.
Yeah, my pleasure. Man, that was so much fun. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Geoff really is a great guy. He is a what you see is what you get kind of guy. And I just love the way that he is living his life, the way he's modeling for the people who work with him, for the people who come and enjoy his ministry. So he's had such influence on so many pastors and leaders, business leaders, and people just all around the world over his career. It's been an amazing thing to watch. Hey, we've got some amazing episodes coming up. We have Chris and Carla Hines from Marriage in Focus. We've got Adam Calvert, who's an incredible therapist. We have Wendy Garner, who is one of Birmingham's most beloved news anchors and has now moved on to another career where she's the executive director of On River Time, which specializes in helping neglected and abused kids experience God's love through the great outdoors. We're going to hear from her in this second career that she's gone into in this later stage of her life. It's going to be an incredible time. Hey, make sure whatever platform you're listening to or watching this on that you like, that you subscribe, that you comment. And also I want to encourage you, if you haven't already done so, go to theageoflions.com and check us out there. We'd love for you to join our list so that we can communicate with you on a regular basis about things that are coming up, and just kind of have you as part of the community as we dialogue together about how we can grow this thing and learn from each other about how to age better with purpose and intentionality. I hope this episode encouraged you and gave you some great tools for you as you're aging with purpose and intentionality. Can't wait to see you next week. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you soon.